The only sound I wanted to hear was my wife's laughter, a promise of a new life. But on that moonlit beach all I heard was a scream, and the sickening sound of my past tearing itself free. The salt-laced air was the perfect antidote. For years my life had been dust, cordite, and the sterile hum of a C-130. But here, on this secluded stretch of coastline with my wife, Lena, the only sounds were the gentle crash of turquoise waves and her laughter. That sound was worth more to me than all the medals they'd pinned to my chest. We were celebrating 5 years of marriage, and more importantly, 1 year of me being home for good. No more deployments, no more whispered goodbyes in the dark. Just this. Her, me, and a future that felt as wide and promising as the ocean in front of us. We'd found a little beachside bar, a ramshackle place with tiki torches and the best grilled fish I'd ever tasted. Lena was glowing, the sunset painting her in shades of orange and gold. She squeezed my hand, her thumb tracing patterns over the thick calluses that never seemed to fade. "See?" she whispered, her eyes sparkling. "This is the real world, Marcus. No more sand and shadows." I smiled, leaning in to kiss her. I was trying. God, I was trying to let that other world go, to unlearn the hypervigilance that had kept me alive for so long. But situational awareness isn't a switch you can just flip off. It's a curse you carry. That's why I noticed them before they were a problem. A group of 4 guys at the far end of the bar, loud, drunk, and radiating an ugly energy that soured the air. They weren't locals. They had the look of city thugs on a weekend trip, their cheap tattoos and aggressive posturing completely at odds with the laid-back vibe of the island. I clocked them, made a mental note of their positions, and tried to focus back on Lena. But I could feel their eyes on us, specifically on her. When we got up to leave, one of them purposefully bumped into my shoulder. He was shorter than me, but wiry, with dead eyes and a sneer that looked permanent. "Watch where you're going, boy," he slurred. I felt that old familiar coil of ice tighten in my gut. I kept my hands open and visible, taking a half-step back. "My mistake," I said, my voice perfectly level. I put a gentle hand on the small of Lena's back, guiding her toward the sandy path that led back to our rental cottage. "You two ain't from around here, are you?" another one called out, his friends laughing. The racial undertone was as thick and suffocating as the humidity. Lena's hand found mine, and her grip was tight. She was scared, and that made the ice in my stomach burn hot. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. De-escalate. Avoid. That was the mission now. Protect my peace. Protect her. The path was poorly lit, winding through a thicket of palm trees away from the main beach. The sound of the bar faded behind us, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves. For a moment I thought we were clear. Then I heard the snap of a twig behind us. Not an animal. The cadence was human. 2 sets of feet, maybe 3. My pace didn't change, but every muscle in my body went taut. I scanned the path ahead, my eyes adjusting to the deep shadows. I was mapping everything. Overhanging branches, loose rocks, the turn in the path 50 yards ahead. "Don't look back," I murmured to Lena, keeping my voice calm. "Just keep walking. A little faster." She nodded, her breathing shallow. She trusted me, but she didn't know the man I used to be. I'd tried to shield her from that. I wanted to be the husband who fixed leaky faucets and killed spiders, not the man who could map a kill zone in the dark. We rounded the turn, and my heart sank. They'd sent one ahead. The wiry one from the bar stood in the middle of the path, blocking our way. He was holding a length of rusty-looking pipe, tapping it against his palm. Behind us I heard the others emerge from the trees, cutting off our retreat. There were 5 of them now. They spread out, forming a loose semicircle, trapping us against the dense foliage. The leader, a big guy with a shaved head, stepped forward. He wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were locked on Lena, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "Pretty little thing like you shouldn't be wandering around in the dark," he said, his voice a low growl. "Good thing we're here to keep you company." Lena pressed herself against my back, her body trembling. I pushed her gently behind me, creating a barrier with my own body. My mind went quiet. The husband, the tourist, the man trying to find peace. He was gone. The crickets, the waves, The fear. It all faded into a dull, distant hum. All that remained was the cold, sharp clarity of the problem in front of me. 5 threats. 1 improvised weapon. Confined space. 1 asset to protect. They thought they had us trapped. They thought they saw fear in my eyes. They didn't. They saw a man doing math. They saw a man who had spent the better part of a decade learning to turn the human body into a weapon. They saw a problem. I saw a solution. "You should have just stayed home, boy," the leader grunted, taking another step. That was his mistake. He crossed the line, the invisible perimeter I had drawn in the sand. He was committing. My world didn't explode into violence. It narrowed. It became a silent film playing at 1,000 frames per second. The leader lunged, big hands reaching for Lena. I didn't move toward him. I moved into him. My left hand shot out, not to block but to deflect, slapping his grabbing arm aside. Simultaneously, my right foot came up, not a flashy kick, but a short, brutal stomp into the side of his knee. There was a wet, tearing sound like ripping thick canvas. He screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and agony as his leg buckled the wrong way. His forward momentum carried him past me, and I drove my elbow into the base of his skull as he fell. He hit the sandy path with a thud and didn't move. 1 down. Before the leader's body had even settled, I was already turning. The wiry one with the pipe swung it in a wide, clumsy arc aimed at my head. Amateurs always aim for the head. I dropped under the swing, the pipe whistling through the air where my temple had just been. As I came up, I drove the heel of my palm hard under his chin, my fingers digging into the soft tissue beneath his jaw. His head snapped back, eyes rolling white. As he staggered, I wrenched the pipe from his loosening grip, and, in the same fluid motion, brought it down sharply on his wrist. The crack of bone was sickeningly loud in the quiet night air. He shrieked, clutching the mangled limb to his chest. 2 down. The remaining 3 froze for a half-second, their drunken confidence vaporizing in the face of the sheer, brutal efficiency they'd just witnessed. The illusion of an easy target had shattered, and in its place was a nightmare. That half-second was all I needed. I took a step back, putting myself firmly between them and Lena, holding the rust-caked pipe like a short sword. My breathing was even, controlled. My heart rate was as steady as a metronome. This was my element. The chaos was a comfort. "Get him!" one of them finally yelled, his voice cracking with a mix of fear and rage. They came at me together, a sloppy, uncoordinated rush. I sidestepped the first one, letting his momentum carry him past me, and drove the end of the pipe into his kidney. He grunted, folding like a cheap suit. The second one tried to tackle me low. I pivoted, bringing my knee up to meet his face. I felt the bridge of his nose give way under the impact, and he collapsed, howling and spitting blood. It was almost over. I turned to face the last man standing. He was smaller than the others, his face pale with terror in the moonlight. He'd backed away, his hands held up in a gesture of surrender. For a moment I thought it was done. I allowed myself a single, shallow breath of relief, and then I saw the glint of steel. It wasn't a gesture of surrender. He'd been reaching into his pocket. He was holding a cheap switchblade, the blade reflecting the distant tiki torches. "Stay back, man. Just stay back," he stammered, waving the knife wildly. I didn't say anything. I just adjusted my grip on the pipe, my eyes locked on the blade. My focus on him was absolute. I was tracking the tremor in his hand, the darting of his eyes, the shift of his weight. The world had narrowed again to just the 2 of us, a predator and his cornered prey. The sound was so faint I almost missed it. A soft footfall on the sand behind me. My training screamed at me, a klaxon in my mind. Flanked. Tunnel vision. You got flanked. I had forgotten the first one I'd taken out. The leader. I'd thought he was unconscious. I was wrong. As I started to turn, I heard Lena's voice, a single, sharp cry of pure terror. "Marcus!" I spun around, and my blood ran cold. The big man was on his feet, his leg dragging uselessly, but his eyes were burning with hate, and he wasn't looking at me. He was staggering past me, lunging, his huge, meaty hands reaching out for my wife. There is a place beyond training, beyond instinct, a place of pure, cold rage. Seeing that man reach for Lena catapulted me there. The world didn't slow down, it ceased to exist. All that was left was the objective, neutralize the threat to my wife. The man with the knife behind me was a phantom, an afterthought. I closed the distance to the leader in 2 explosive strides. He was still 3 feet from Lena when I reached him. I didn't use the pipe. This was personal. I drove my shoulder into his chest, a full-body impact that stopped his lunge dead. His breath left him in a ragged whoosh. Before he could recover, my hands were on him. One hand clamped onto the back of his neck, fingers digging into the pressure points below his ear. The other grabbed his arm, the one he was still reaching out with. I twisted. Not just the arm, but my whole body, using his own weight and momentum against him. His already injured leg couldn't support the sudden shift, and he went down hard, face first into the sand. I went down with him, my knee driving into the small of his back, pinning him. The fight went out of him instantly, replaced by guttural moans of pain. A flicker of movement to my right. The last one. The one with the knife. He saw his leader incapacitated, his friends broken and bleeding on the ground, and his nerve finally shattered. He made a panicked, slashing motion in my direction, a desperate Hail Mary attack, then turned to run. It was a mistake. You never turn your back. I kicked out with my free leg, my heel connecting solidly with the back of his knee. He went down with a yelp, his leg folding like a cheap lawn chair. The knife skittered away into the darkness. He tried to crawl away, whimpering. I didn't pursue. He was no longer a threat. The silence that descended was sudden and absolute, broken only by the whimpers of the injured men and the distant, mocking sound of the waves. Adrenaline still coursed through me, a familiar electric hum. My breathing was controlled, but my hands were shaking. I slowly got to my feet, my eyes immediately finding Lena. She was pressed against a palm tree, her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Awe? Disbelief? "Lena," I said, my voice sounding rough, alien to my own ears. I took a step toward her. She flinched. That single, involuntary movement hit me harder than any punch. I stopped, holding up my hands, palms out. The pipe was still in my left hand. I looked down at it, as if seeing it for the first time, and let it drop to the sand with a soft thud. "It's me," I said softly. "It's over. Are you okay?" She nodded, her whole body trembling. She slowly lowered her hands, her eyes darting from me to the wreckage of the 5 men scattered around us. "Marcus, what? Who are you?" The question hung in the air, more chilling than any threat. I had spent years building a wall between that life and this one, between the soldier and the husband. In less than 2 minutes I had torn it all down. "I'm the man who loves you," I said, my voice raw with emotion. "I'm the man who would do anything to keep you safe." I could hear sirens in the distance now. Someone from the bar must have called the police. Good. I walked slowly over to Lena, giving her space, letting her see that the violence was gone, that the soldier had retreated. She didn't flinch this time. She took a hesitant step toward me, then another, and then she was in my arms, burying her face in my chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I held her, stroking her hair, my cheek pressed against the top of her head. The local police were professional but wary. They saw the Scene 5 men, all needing medical attention, and the 2 of us, completely unharmed. The story the conscious ones tried to spin about a random attack fell apart under the weight of the evidence and their own drunken inconsistencies. When they ran my name, a call was made, then another. The local police chief, a tired man with a kind face, came over to me while Lena gave her statement. "Your record is heavily redacted, son," he said, looking at me with new eyes. "Delta, wasn't it?" I just gave a slight nod. I didn't have to say anything else. He understood. He saw the battered men being loaded into ambulances and then looked at me, a man standing protectively beside his wife. "They picked the wrong damn tourist," he muttered, shaking his head. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Go on, get your wife home. We'll clean this up." We walked back to the cottage. hand in hand, not speaking. The moon was high now, casting long shadows. When we got inside, Lena finally turned to me. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a deep, searching intensity. "You never told me," she whispered. "Not really. Not what it was like. What they trained you to be." I looked at the man in the mirror-calloused hands, scars she'd never asked about. A stillness that she'd once called calm, but now understood was something else entirely. "I wanted to leave him behind," I said honestly. "For you. I wanted to just be your husband." She reached up and touched my face, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw. "You are," she said, her voice firm. "You're my husband who kept me safe. You're my soldier who brought himself home to me." She leaned in and kissed me, a kiss that wasn't about passion, but about acceptance. It was a promise that she wasn't afraid. Not of them, and not of the man I had to be to protect her. The shadows were still there, but for the first time I knew they didn't have to define me. Standing there in the quiet light of our vacation cottage, I finally felt like I was home.